Hi, I'm Chris Brady.
And I'm Lily King Cisneros.
Water. It's there when you need it, from the time you brush your teeth to the time you drink it. We're going to learn today where Mesa gets its water.
We'll take you on a tour of how it's supplied, treated, and talk about the quality of water that's delivered to your home.
So stay right there because Mesa Now starts right now. Mesa has two sources of drinking water: groundwater or aquifers, surface water. Mesa has 30 groundwater deep aquifer wells, and Mesa's surface water is divided into two zones. The first is the city zone, and the second is the eastern zone. The city zone water is supplied by the Salt and Verde rivers. Today, we're here to visit with Charlie Esther from SRP. Charlie is the Water Resource Operations Manager at the Salt River Project. Welcome, Charlie.
Good morning, Chris.
Thanks for joining us, Charlie. Can you tell us a little bit about how SRP delivers its water to Mesa?
I certainly would love to do that. I want to take a far step back, though, and imagine that all of our water that we can see right here and that we drink with and brush our teeth, as you said, comes from snow in the mountains. And it's a really long journey. But ultimately, it melts, runs off into the river system, into our reservoirs, where we've carefully released the amount of water that's needed in the valley and divert it here at Granite Reef Dam, where we're sitting today, into the canal system. And from there, it goes to individual water treatment plants and into piping and right up to individual homes.
So we're brushing with snow.
Basically, we're brushing with snow, with a little bit of groundwater and CAP water thrown in there, too.
And that's amazing.
So, Charlie, let's talk a little bit about kind of how that water's held. I mean, many people maybe are aware of some of the reservoirs that are upstream from where we are today, but talk a little bit about, maybe some of that history a little bit, because I know Mesa was one of the early cities that joined at SRP and helping to establish some of that retention of water that's further upstream from here.
Absolutely. Salt River Project dates all the way back to 1903, a very long, rich history. And the founding fathers of the Salt River Project owned land here in the valley, and they tried to farm some of that land in Mesa, of course. And they found that the river either flowed way too high or dried up in the summer, and it was not very good for farming. And they had the vision to build a dam at the confluence of the Tonto Creek and the Salt River to build Roosevelt Dam. And they began construction in 1905. It took 6 years to build. It was completed in 1911, and that really was the foundation of what has become the Salt River Project. It tamed the Salt River's erratic flows, and it provides a constant and reliable and very dependable supply of water to the Phoenix area.
So I know that because of the water coming from the snowpack that's created further upstream, that's an area of great concern also for SRP, is the quality of that water coming off the watershed. I know this is about water and the water supply, but that's a very important part of SRP's management also, is managing the resource, if you would, where the snow is actually put down.
You couldn't have said it better. Our water supply is so dependent upon the health of our forests. And as you know, Mesa has teamed up with the Salt River Project and with the Northern Arizona Forest Fund to help protect those forest lands. We really need the forest to be in prime condition, not burned. These forest fires that we've been having recently are very detrimental to the land and to water quality. So it's really to everyone's advantage to work with the Forest Service and others to keep those lands in great shape.
And I know that you had mentioned this earlier about how, this winter we were supposed to have a wet season, right? And it didn't happen.
So, Lily, you've touched upon probably my biggest disappointment of the last several years. We have this tremendous El Nino going on in the Central Pacific, and El Ninos typically bring wet weather to the Southwest. And, we've been in this drought for almost 20 years now. Not of course, not continuously. A year or so has been wet here and there. But we were so anxiously awaiting this wet winter that was coming. And January got off to a great start. Had a lot of snow up in the mountains. approaching 200% of normal. We thought, this is it. We're going to fill the reservoir system. In fact, I even made some pretty pretty strong predictions that we would fill this spring, and then it just quit raining and quit snowing. We haven't had a decent storm since the first week in January, and it doesn't. While there is some potential precipitation in the forecast this week, our winter season's over. We're not going to fill the reservoirs at this time of year. Of course, like we were just talking about with the forest, a little bit of rain and snow now would definitely help reduce fire conditions. But in terms of our reservoirs and water supply, it's a good thing we are where we are now with storage, because we're in good shape. But we're gonna have to wait another year before we have a chance to fill up.
So Charlie, I think one of the things that we all kind of maybe take for granted is the amount of capacity of these reservoirs and the whole system as it works its way down to the valley here. Talk to us a little bit about how SRP manages that, because frankly, but for these reservoirs, Phoenix, the area would be much more limited, obviously, in this population, in commerce, and the types of businesses we can bring. So what role does SRP play in helping to manage that resource from the time it comes into the reservoirs?
Certainly. I mentioned Roosevelt Dam, of course, but that's just one dam of our system, although it does hold 70% of our total storage capacity. But we have 2 additional reservoirs on the Verde and 3 below Roosevelt on the Salt. Combined, they hold about 2.3 million acre-feet of water. Now, just to put that into perspective, we use about 800,000 acre-feet in a year for all of the uses here in the valley. So if the reservoirs were completely full and there was no water coming into them, we would have 3 years worth of water supply. Of course, the rivers always flow a certain amount, some greater when it's wet, less when it's dry. And then combined with groundwater wells, which SRP works conjunctively with groundwater as well, even at our storage capacity now of 58%, which is about the same as it was last year, our water supply is in very good shape. We would not anticipate having any type of water restrictions for 3 or 4 years, even if it turned very dry.
So Charlie, we know that a lot of our adjacent states have struggled through droughts, and you just mentioned something that I think is very important, is that because of these reservoirs and the management that SRP has with the resource, we are in a much better position than many of the states, California, for example, around us. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be aware of the water conservation efforts that we still need to make. Talk a little bit about the role that SRP plays in kind of encouraging and being good stewards of this precious resource.
Okay. Of course, SRP works with all of the valley cities, and Mesa is one of our strongest partners, of course, to conserve water, because if we do live in a very dry, harsh climate, water is not abundant, and it's very important that we treat every drop of water as if it's the last one and conserve that water. And in fact, SRP works with all of the valley cities in a very, very popular conservation program called Water Use It Wisely. And in fact, it had its genesis in the city of Mesa.
Right.
So that program is used throughout the valley. We also participate in water conservation expos, where we provide irrigation controllers. And you might think, well, how does that really help? But over the course of time, we have given away, and I shouldn't say given away, we have partnered to provide these to individuals to the tune of several thousand. And if each one saves a few thousand gallons of water a year, that adds up very quickly. And the nice thing about these water controllers that we've provided, they don't turn on the sprinkler when it rains.
Yes.
Now, sure, it doesn't rain very much, but how often have you seen sprinklers on when it's raining?
Yes.
And my first thought is, oh, what a terrible waste of water.
Right.
Absolutely. So it seems like Mesa, or even Phoenix and Arizona in general, you guys have just been very cognizant of managing it well, right? And just preserving it, because it is a natural resource, and we don't want to be in a situation to where we have those like California, how they have
restrictions.
Yep. And there's only certain days that you can water your lawn or wash your car or any of those situations.
Lily, you bring up a great point. I mean, Phoenix is the 5th or 6th largest city in the United States now, and we've been in a drought for nearly 20 years, and we have not had mandatory restrictions throughout the valley at all. We're the only city in the Southwest that can make that claim. And why is that? Is it because we have such a good water supply? Well, we have a very dependable water supply, but it's at risk just like any other city around the West. But what really that makes us different from everyone else is the breadth and the amount of planning and forethought that has gone into providing our water supply. the Salt River Project back in 1903, the Central Arizona Project that was completed in the mid-'80s, the extensive use of groundwater, the fact that we've recharged over 1 million acre-feet of water into the ground for the times when we don't have an adequate water supply, that we can draw those supplies back out. So amongst all those different supplies, we have probably one of the most adequate and reliable supplies of water of any city in the Southwest.
So Charlie, just a few questions here at the end. One, thank you for being a great partner with Mesa and with all the cities in the Valley. I think it's an incredible relationship to have with the provider of water that comes into the system that we can treat and deliver to our residents. I think obviously very successful. It's great to have the expertise of SRP to manage resource. But here we are today. It's obvious. We're sitting here with the Salt River right behind us, the beautiful Red Mountain. So we're here at Granite Reef Dam. Tell the viewers, tell us what's the purpose of this facility here that we're at today.
Okay, I would love to. And first I want to thank you also for being such a great partner. I mean, SRP can't do this alone. It's all about collaboration and working together to the final goal, which is to keep the water flowing. And where we are right now is Granite Reef Diversion Dam. This dam was the first structure that was built as part of the Salt River Project. It was completed, I believe, in 1905 or 6. So it's even older than Roosevelt Dam. And what it does, just a few miles upstream here, the Salt and the Verde rivers come together.
Right.
And the Verde disappears at that point, and we're looking at the Salt River here. And this dam diverts the water on the north side into the Arizona Canal, on the south side into the South Canal. And from there, it flows pretty much southwest throughout the entire valley. And if you are a farmer, you will take water delivery out of the canal directly. If you're a city dweller, like most of us are, I think,
Yes.
You turn on your tap and out comes the water. Well, it is this water, but it has gone through a little bit different pathway. It gets diverted into a city water treatment plant, like Val Vista, for example, and from there it goes through a filtration process and becomes pure and potable drinking water. And there it goes into the city's distribution systems, and just like little tiny veins going out into the city to where you turn on your faucet and out comes Salt River water.
Very good. So that's what a great story, especially for those in the western side of Mesa. That's where those that live on that part of Mesa, we call it I call it the on project side of our system. They're receiving their water from the Salt River. So,
And it's coming straight from here.
Here we are. It's someday.
Yes. Anything else you want to add, Charlie?
I would just like to say that this is so beautiful, and part of our advertising campaign right now, if you've seen it, is water. It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
All you have to do is look behind us, and you can vouch for that. Thank you very much.
Charlie, thanks for being on the show with us today.
Thank you. As Charlie has explained, SRP supplies the city zone water, but the eastern zone water is supplied by the Colorado River water and delivered through the Central Arizona Project. Joining us now is Ted Cook, General Manager with Central Arizona Project. Welcome, Ted.
Thanks for having me.
Ted, thanks for being on the show today. So we're having a show, we're talking a lot about water and where Mesa gets its water. So obviously the CAP, which is right here behind us, is an important part of Mesa's water portfolio. But a lot of people probably don't understand where it comes from. How does it get here? So maybe you could take us kind of the origins of this watershed, where it starts, and maybe just kind of bring us up to this point, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, every drop of water in the Central Arizona Project Canal comes from the Colorado River, over 300 miles away. Not from here, but 300-mile canal. This is about halfway along that canal. The Colorado River itself comes from snowmelt in the Rockies, mostly in Colorado and Wyoming. It falls during the winter mostly, and then runoff during the spring into the river. We take the water at a very large pumping plant off of Lake Havasu and pump it through several other pumping stations to get it here and to the rest of our customers.
So from the point from Lake Havasu coming up here, it almost seems like it's kind of going against gravity. Is that correct? I mean,
Right.
to a certain degree, in some places it is.
It is uphill. This elevation is higher than Lake Mead, where the water is pumped off. So we will pump up water for a certain elevation and then let it flow via gravity for some distance, and then pump it up again and let it flow down, and pump it up again and flow down. We have 15 pumping plants in total. We have 5 from between the river and here.
Okay. So that's a lot of effort to get that water from Lake Havasu,
Right.
and bring that up to here. I've always been amazed at the relationship of CAP with also just being able to have cheap power, and that's important because that's a tremendous amount of energy
Right.
that's expended to get that. So tell us a little bit about that, because as important as the water is, without having an expensive source or a reasonably inexpensive source of power to deliver this water would be very expensive. So talk to us a little bit about how that works.
It would be, and power as a total cost for us is the largest single expenditure we make is for electricity. We're the largest single electricity user in the state of Arizona, just to pump the CAP water.
Wow.
Of the total cost of delivery to get a unit of water to one of our customers, the cost of power is about 40% of the total cost to get the water to the customers. It's important to have affordable power. It's also important to have reliable power because we pump all around the clock. The water is moving all the time.
Sure.
And so we need to have a power source that's available all the time. And that source that we have, it was built as part of the Central Arizona project itself, is a Navajo generating station. It's on the Navajo reservation. It's near Page, Arizona. It's a coal-burning power plant, and lots of folks don't like fossil fuels, but right now with the technology that mankind has, fossil fuel power plants are the inexpensive, reliable, round-the-clock, we call it baseload sources of power. And it's been there for a long time. We hope it's there for a long time going into the future, because that's what we need. There are other sources of power available. Many of them are more expensive, and nearly all of them are not as reliable as that resource.
So with all the water that's being pumped, like you were talking about, from Lake Havasu and coming down, where is this water that we're sitting in front of, at this canal? Where is this going?
Well, this is going to the customers downstream, down canal. I believe right upstream of here is our Salt Gila pumping plant. And that is the last plant for quite some time until we are down in Pinal County, in the next county. And so there's gravity flow for a long time. The next big customers, once we get out of the Phoenix metropolitan area, are large irrigation districts in Pinal County. And then south of there, we have several of our municipal industrial customers, similar to Mesa, in Pima County. As a matter of fact, our largest single municipal industrial customer is City of Tucson in Pima County.
So important to note, just south of here, Mesa citizens approved the construction of a new water treatment plant, Signal Butte and Elliott. So we'll be tapping into the CAP down southeast Mesa over the next, I think that plant will be scheduled to be over the next 2 to 3 years. And so that'll be another spot where Mesa will be then pulling the water from the canal and using it to treat a fast-growing part of Mesa, the southeast part.
Right. Depending on, many of our customers have multiple points of diversion off of our canal, depending on what the orientation of the canal is with the city or other user service area. If it just happens to touch at one point, that's logically the point that customer will have their diversion structure, or turnout we call it. And in many cases, the treatment plant is right there, right next to the canal. And it's a you can, as you can imagine, when you look at the canal behind us, a lot of advanced planning is required, because if a turnout is not already in place with the capacity that you need, putting a new one in is a pretty involved process to basically cut a section out of this canal and put in a new.
And we started
structure.
that process years ago, before we had the plans to build out the plant. So we're trying to get that timed, and it's this is, I think, for people in Mesa need to understand, this is an important part of our portfolio, because we've talked about the Salt River and the reservoirs, and it provides water to the west part of Mesa, but the CAP and our wells are very critical to continue to support the growth that we're experiencing in southeast Mesa.
Right, and I think it's important for our customers, your constituents, to understand too the importance of having a diversified portfolio.
Yes.
I mean, both Salt River Project and Central Arizona Project are surface water supplies, but they come from different watersheds. And even though we've both in recent years suffered, both Salt River and Colorado River suffered from drought, they're not always completely correlated. And
Right.
so having those dual sources of supply allows Mesa's water supply to be more reliable.
Yeah,
Sure,
very good.
exactly. So can you talk to us about using non-CAP water? There's a use service agreement that you guys are working with Mesa.
Yes, we're working with actually all of our customers and the Bureau of Reclamation. This is a reclamation project owned by the United States, and our district is the operator of it. But right now, as I said earlier, every drop of water that's in that canal is from the Colorado River, and it was for the most part pumped off recently. And right now it looks full, and it is right here at this moment in time. But there are times of the year, and if we happen to go into shortage, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. There is extra capacity in the canal that can be used for something else. And so, simply put, what the CAP system use agreement is an agreement that would be among us, Bureau of Reclamation, and various customers that would establish the rules of who gets what capacity at what times of years, at what times of year in delivery, so that those different supplies don't step on each other's toes. So in addition to the Colorado River water that's in the canal, certain customers might obtain another supply of other Colorado River supply from off the river that would not be CAP project water, and there's a place for that. The federal government has retained the right to use the canal for wheeling of other supplies that it might obtain for federal purposes, including tribal purposes. During shortage, over the last several decades, many parties in Arizona have stored water underground that would need to be pumped out, put back into the canal, and moved somewhere else. There's room for all of it, but it just needs to be coordinated, and that's what this important
Sure.
agreement, this document would be, is the rules of how does that all fit together. It's reconciled during the annual order process, and then everybody kind of knows where their place is and where their water is in line
Okay.
at any point in time.
So just kind of, final thought, you kind of mentioned this. So there is still kind of this discussion about what the long-term sustainability of the CAP as far as all the different demands that are on the Colorado River, whether it's Nevada, whether it's California, and then what's left for Arizona. Help kind of maybe from a high level, simple, help us understand how that works, and is this a certain water supply for Arizona, or we hear about all the drought conditions and the things that are happening in California. How does that affect what's happening in Arizona?
Well, I'm going to have to answer that question in two ways, I think. First of all, in general, and then with respect to Mesa. In general, the surface water supplies are not 100% reliable because it depends on precipitation. And so there is some annual variability, and then there's a longer-term variability that is a result of drought. And we are in a period of extensive drought right now in the Colorado River Basin. However, that being said, all of the water that has been supplied into Lake Mead, where our supply comes from the upper basin, from Lake Powell, has been a normal release, basically not impacted by the drought at this point in time. But Lake Mead is still going down. And the reason for that is that it's over-allocated. So even when there is a normal amount of water coming into Lake Mead, the amount that was allocated early in the last century among Arizona, California, and Nevada, who are the so-called lower basin states, there's 4 upper basin states, is over-allocated to the lower basin.
Too much into it.
So we are taking too much. We're entitled to take it, but by continuing to do that, it will continue to take the level of Lake Mead down, and that we call the structural deficit, and we need to fix that. But there are many things, and we probably don't have time today to talk about what it is that is going on to, number one, support the level in Lake Mead so that we don't have to take involuntary cutbacks through a shortage declaration, and then number two, to begin to solve this over-allocation of the river in the lower basin. But there are priorities on the river. Unfortunately for us, for Arizonans, Arizona is the last priority among the 3 lower basin states of Colorado, Nevada, and Arizona. That is something that we had to give up in order to get the support of the other states to get the Central Arizona Project funded by Congress. Was, sure, we'll let you build your canal, but if there's ever a shortage, you get to go last. And so that is something that we have to deal with. But I'm kind of going off topic here a little bit. That was the impetus for us doing all the things that we've done in Arizona that we're famous for groundwater management, storing water underground for shortage. Why? Because we have to.
Right.
Because we are last. With respect to Mesa itself, we talked a little bit earlier about Mesa's diversified portfolio. Mesa is among the highest priority users on the Central Arizona Project Canal. And at this present time, even over the say next decade to come, we do not see the shortage impacting the deliveries to our highest priority customers, to our M&I customers, and to our Indian customers. However, while some lower priority customers may have to be cut back, like agriculture, for instance, that's going to raise the price for everyone else, because in cities who have retail
We're all
customers,
interconnected somehow.
they know that problem, that we say conserve, and that's a good thing to do. But when you use less, the cost per unit goes up.
Sure.
Right. Well, Ted, thanks for being here with us today. We appreciate it. We've learned a lot about where the water from Mesa comes from. Now we're going to learn a bit about how we treat the water in Mesa. Joining us now is Dan Clevenger, Director of Water Resources. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lily.
Where are we?
Well, we're in north central Mesa. We're at the Val Vista Water Treatment Plant. This facility is co-owned by Mesa and Phoenix. It's the largest water treatment plant in the state, and that's one of two in Mesa.
So, Dan, we've been taking the viewers on a little tour of how Mesa gets its water. So we spoke with SRP and CAP, and now we're here at the treatment plants. So can you explain to us how Mesa's water is treated
Sure.
for our residents?
Sure. Well, I'll give you a quick overview. It starts with the source water, which is SRP Canal. It runs adjacent to the plant. That water comes in. Of course, the water's coming from a river, so there's still things in there.
Sediment,
There's
minerals.
lots of different things. There's fish and there's
Inner
sticks.
tubes.
Shopping carts. First thing that happens is a screening process. So they get out the sticks and the fish and whatever might be floating down. The remaining water comes into the plant. Of course, there's still suspended solids and things in there. So what they do is they add a coagulant. What that does is lets the particles kind of clump together, flocculate as they call it, and then they sink to the bottom. And then the remaining water comes into an area like this, a clarifier, where it settles out, and then that good water, apparently good water, goes through a finer process, filtration. So what happens in filtration is you have a bed of sand and anthracite at this plant, and it filters through there and gets out the finest particles. And what's left then is good, clean water, but it needs then to be chlorine is added for disinfection, and a little bit of fluoride for dental health. Then that water goes into storage, into a reservoir, and is released to the public for distribution after that.
So Dan, let's make sure we understand. This is a facility in the city of Mesa that is jointly owned by Mesa Phoenix. I guess really Phoenix runs it. We share the cost. Talk to us a little bit about that arrangement.
Sure. It's a long-time partnership. This plant was built in 1975, so we've had a relationship for quite some time. The plant can produce 220 million gallons a day. Mesa's share is about 40% of that, or 90,000 gallons per day. Down the road, we have another plant about 7-8 miles away, the Brown Road plant. That one's capable of producing 72 million gallons a day. So Mesa's volume available for our residents, our businesses, is about 162 million gallons per day.
So in Mesa, if we want to look at from the average resident, what would you say? I know the numbers have been going down a little bit. Average resident, how much would they use?
Typical household would be 9,000 gallons per month. Typical household, some more, some less.
Okay.
Is that about average, or is that pretty conservative?
I'd say we're probably a little conservative in Mesa. I can tell you the trend now, as Chris mentioned, is it's going down. The use per household is going down. I think we're seeing that because of improved fixtures in the house, more efficient appliances, People may be converting their landscape into xeriscape, and so they don't have the lush lawns. Not as many folks do anymore. So the trend's going down. We're selling more water because more people are moving here and businesses are coming, but the average use, average home is down a bit.
That's good for conservation's sake.
Yes, it is.
So Dan, let's be clear. We've been talking about the different sources of water, the portfolio that Mesa has. As you mentioned, this water that's coming here, treated in this plant, is coming out of the Salt River. And that means it's on project water. So the majority of this water then continues to serve, for our portion that Mesa receives, is serving most of West Mesa. Is that correct?
Right, yeah. The source is the Salt and Verde rivers, and from this plant, the water for Mesa residents, Mesa businesses, serves about the western third of Mesa.
Okay. I think that's important. Even though we're clear over here in northeast Mesa, we're still pushing that water all the way over to the western part of Mesa.
Correct.
Good. Now, there's been a lot of conversation nationally about not necessarily where the water comes from. Mesa's very blessed to have a variety of different sources, but in that distribution of the water through the different pipes. Over the years, different communities have used different types of pipes to distribute that water. A lot of talk about iron pipes and iron and lead and different PVC, but specifically lead's been kind of a conversation that's been out there. Talk to us about what you know about the Mesa system and kind of our exposure or what's been implemented over the years.
Sure. Mesa uses a variety of pipes. I can tell you we've never used lead pipes. That's been a concern in other parts of the country. We've got a pretty robust inspection and replacement program whereby we invest millions of dollars a year to monitor for corrosion and leaks so that we know that our system's in good shape and is delivering the water efficiently and where it's supposed to be.
So then when leaks happen or corrosion happens, there's a replacement policy or a time period to actually get those pipes fixed and replaced?
Yeah, it's priority based. We do have limited funding, but we've been investing on the order of $5 to $6 million a year. So we take the highest priority. We have a whole database, asset management, so we know where our pipes are. We know what kind of pipe. We know how old they are. And so if we start to see problems in a particular area with a certain type or age of pipe, we know where the rest is, and we can treat that accordingly.
And that translates to drinking water, because ultimately that is the pathway to where people, they turn on their tap and grab a glass of water. It's right there.
Absolutely.
So Mesa has a pretty good track record on our quality of drinking water too, right?
We sure do. The quality of water produced at this plant and our Brownwood plant is outstanding. It's very good. We have to meet over 100 federal and state standards, and we do that on a daily basis. We've never had any EPA violations. We're very proud of our water, actually, so much so that we hope folks want to be more educated. We do have a consumer confidence report that we post on our website for folks if they're more interested in water quality in Mesa.
So Dan, as Mesa continues to grow, especially in the southeast side, that isn't water. This water is not for Southeast Mesa. Tell us about what your plans are. We talked a little bit about this in a segment before, but give us some more details about how you're planning for the future as Mesa grows in the southeast portion.
Sure, and that's where our growth is, in Southeast Mesa primarily. We are well into design, wrapping that up, frankly, for a $125 million water treatment plant. It's the Signal Butte plant. It'll be located at Signal Butte and Elliott. Construction will start this summer, and if I didn't mention, it's a $125 million plant. And we expect construction will last about 2 years, so hopefully by summer of 2018, we're producing great quality water down there as well.
Wow, that's awesome. So then all of that Signal Butte water treatment plant, is just the expected growth for that, because right now all the water is coming from either this plant or the ground treatment plant, right?
That's correct. The capacity of the new plant will be 24 million gallons a day. Of course, over time, we plan to expand that, but we'll wait till the need is there.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Dan.
So the next time you turn on your faucet, you know where your water's coming from. You know it's being treated to the highest standards. In Mesa, we're really blessed to have some quality water, modern systems that are delivering it. So rest assured, you're drinking some of the best water in the country.
And if you have more questions or want to look at the consumer quality reports, go online to mesaaz.gov/CCR. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.